To emerge about just exactly how Donald Trump strong-armed Netanyahu into surrendering to Hamas as his not even first act of president, because he's not president yet, but he is already managing to cause damage. So the Wall Street Journal published this morning an article titled "Inside the Gaza Deal: How a New York Real Estate Developer Took on Netanyahu and Hamas." No, the real estate developer is not Trump himself. Uh, and yeah, this is not the first story about exactly this meeting that took place last Saturday. And it's I'm afraid it's probably gonna be somewhat symbolic of how Trump is planning to handle the relationship with Netanyahu. Now, a couple of days ago, I wasn't on the show. I mentioned in the chat in response to somebody that I wonder if Trump is doing this because Netanyahu didn't call or called to congratulate Biden after Biden's 2020 election victory, which Trump, of course, went on to claim was stolen, and so Netanyahu calling Biden and being the first to call him upset Trump. And but I wasn't joking. I mean, this is Trump. This is what he is. He's this angry little kid. He'll remember things like this, and he will set policy around this. Remember, his first run for president, he was calling everybody on stage names, all the Republicans who were running. He was calling them names. He was doing the same with world leaders. He was calling Kim Jong-un Little Rocket Man. Now, this is somebody who should be treated as an enemy, and name calling might be a part of that. But of course, that quickly changed when Kim Jong-un was happy to sit with Trump. So I really am wondering just how bad things are going to be. The start of the relationship is very, very bad. He is starting off worse than Biden, and I think this should be noted. Let's very much hope that there's always the possibility that this is something that's let's stop dealing with Hamas so we start dealing with Iran, which of course is not a good thing to do, but is better than fully throwing Israel under the bus. But yeah, this is we're off to a very bad start with Trump, and let's not pretend otherwise. Welcome to the Daily Objective. Thank you, Jonathan, for the super chat. Daniel, your thoughts about this, and we'll go through some of the article.
Yeah, I mean, first, I think it's important to, when were wrong in the past and when some things have changed, to go out, call it out, apologize, and sort of, realize if you made sort of like a structural issue or if you just didn't have enough information. And I'd like to use this platform to apologize to Arab Americans who voted for Donald Trump because I was making fun of them. They considered Biden-Harris administration as this like they are too pro-Israel, they are too pro-war, so we have to vote for Trump and he'll get us the peace. And I was making fun of them because I consider Trump as like he's gonna come in and he's gonna allow Netanyahu to do pretty much whatever he wants. And then Trump comes in and gets this deal through that Biden couldn't since March, since April or May, like last year. I mean, it's incredible. They were actually right. Even I couldn't predict this. So that's what's really, we were talking about. Is this like a betrayal? And to large part, it is a betrayal because people believed Trump was going to be pro-Israel. But also something more important about Trump is he doesn't have any principles. He doesn't have any, he can change his mind from day to day, and it's not only it's not a new thing, we know this about him, but also everybody will stand behind him, everybody will change his mind based on what Trump says, and that's what is truly unpredictable about his presidency. Like he might I think I really liked someone when I think it was during the election night, someone said or someone asked what is gonna be Trump's policy on Ukraine and Russia, and someone said, well, he'll do anything from nuking Kiev and nuking Moscow and anything in between. We have no idea, and that's what's I think really like scary the most. And I'll mention also because many people have been saying, well, maybe there is a secret deal to like deal with Iran, and I keep hearing it, but first there's no evidence for it, and second, how does that make any sense? Like if let's say Trump is someone who recognizes that Iran is a threat, like really has the grasp of knowing why Iran is problematic. Why would such a person ever like you know make a ceasefire with Hamas? I cannot wrap my head around why would that be sort of like a prerequisite of that. It's not like Hamas and Iran are separate entities or sort of ours, somewhat you can only deal with one or you only have enough resources to deal with one. Like America is the biggest military in the world. Israel itself can probably deal with all the threats in the Middle East, and it wouldn't have any problems with that. So yeah, I think that argument has like no substance at all.
Yeah, I mean, Israel can definitely militarily deal with all the threats if it wasn't restricted by the idea that you have to avoid civilian casualties on the side that attacks you. Um, Thank you, Mumu Joe, for the super chat. Thank you, Bonnie, for the super chat. Thank you, PC, for the super chat. PC says, "Hi, Razi. We are in the lovely new Amtrak hall at Penn Station, New York City. Ceasefire deal is bad." Yes, I agree both about the ceasefire deal and I believe it's called Moynihan uh, Hall or something. But yeah, I'm going to be there soon. I'm not going to say when because some of our occasional visitors in the chat might be interested in that. Yeah, there's a few comments in the chat I wanted to address. Robin says, "Is Elon Musk big rocket man now?" What happens in Mar-a-Lago stays in Mar-a-Lago. Some things we don't want to know. And Mumu Joe says, "Exactly, he's a child, but it works." I mean, works in what way? Look, it works in the sense that Netanyahu, I think, is more afraid to go against Trump than he is against Biden. I mean, Biden, tries to push a deal on Netanyahu. Netanyahu, again, I don't think he did enough to stand up to Biden, but he would do more, I think, than to stand up to Trump. One of my favorite Netanyahu moments is the moment back when he was prime minister and Obama was president. They were meeting in the White House. There's this photo up, and they talk for a few minutes, and he schools Obama basically on history, and Obama is sitting there looking very uncomfortable. It's beautiful. Uh, you'll never see Netanyahu do that to Trump. And for good reason. I mean, because Trump will hold that. Trump will actually, could fund Iran over something like that. And yeah, so it works. I agree, Mumujo. It works in the sense that, yeah, it's a way to strong arm people, because they're afraid, because they know you're a loose cannon. But it doesn't work in the sense that, this is the president of the United States. He should do what is best for the United States, even if he personally doesn't like some leader or another. Again, the pressure that should actually have been put on Israel, if America was going to go about this the wrong way, is do not negotiate with terrorists. It should be against this deal. It should be, this is a deal. If you do this deal, it's bad for America because it sends a message to people who also want to kill Americans, that if you kill people, you kill Western people, you kidnap them, you will get rewarded for it. And that is what is happening.
Yeah, and also, something to remember about American presidents is, first of all, they are not dictators, and they are sort of beholden to not only American citizens, but of course the parliament, or sorry, the Congress, and the push back against Congress in many cases. And when it comes to sort of the worst parts of Biden, let's say when it comes to Israel, oftentimes you have like pushback from the Democrats. Or when he was trying to run for presidency, you had the pushback from Democrats. Basically, after the debate, he was like, "No, you're done. There is no way you're running again." But with Trump, there is zero pushback ever. There is Republicans simply don't hold him responsible. Again, we have great people in his administration when it comes to Israel. Marco Rubio, and many more. I cannot think of them right now. But there is a bunch of them that are like really good. Even when who was it who was recently in the Senate hearing? He said every single member of Hamas should be killed, and basically calling for like a real
It was
substance.
Hegseth.
Sorry.
That was Hegseth, the
Yeah,
defense.
Hexa. Like calling for real things, but like this is incredibly bad. Will they resign from his, not even his cabinet because it hasn't been, although I don't think, yeah, it's being confirmed on January 20th with Trump, so it's not confirmed yet. But will they reject it? Will we see any sort of, pushback against Trump when something like this happens? And if not, then yeah, we are in for I mean, many people don't remember, but when Trump was president, every day was like a news, like, okay, what did he do now? And it's like he just launched like a meme coin, and it's just going in the news. It's like some people are not even talking about it yet. It's like, and this is like going to be every day. I'm already so tired. Like the fact that there is no like with Biden, I can at least predict, like whenever I open the news, it's like it's gonna be another like kind of bad thing when it comes to pretty much anything. But with Trump, it like he can restore the gold standard tomorrow, or he can put American Federal Reserve on Bitcoin. Like there is literally like nothing I can rely on. Like I cannot rely on my senses almost. Like it's like Russian propaganda almost. It's like anything can happen.
Well, don't worry, Daniel. There's only 4 years left. Um, Thank you, PC, for another super chat. PC says, Razi, will Israel continue operations in Gaza? Look, Israel historically respects these ceasefires. Hamas tends to, at least in the 20 years since Israel left Gaza, and then occasionally Hamas started another round of fighting. Israel, when there was a ceasefire, there were usually several of them. Like there was a ceasefire, and then Hamas, when they saw an opportunity to kill Israeli soldiers or something, they would take that opportunity. Then there would be a ceasefire again. So yeah, Israel. I don't think a violation of the ceasefire will come from Israel. Look, there's news all the time about maybe it's going to fall apart before it even starts. This is always a possibility. With the previous um, hostage deal in November 2023. There was also this issue when the first hostages were meant to be released, and Hamas delayed it because why not? They're laughing in our face, and why not just delay it by 30 minutes, an hour, whatever it was that they delayed it by. They know that for Israel's part, Israel will do its part, and of course they're going to use it against Israel in whatever way that they can.
Yeah, just one more thing I want to mention about because Bonnie in the chat says, but those who push back could mostly be window dressing since they too don't have clear principles to back them up. So even when people stood up against Biden, it was not principles. It was simply this is looking bad for us. This is looking bad for our constituencies. We want to win an election. We think we have a better chance with a different candidate if it's Kamala Harris or anybody else, than with Biden in the current state. So when it comes to sort of when Trump does crazy things, the reason you should expect pushback from Republicans, not in an ideal culture, but in this culture, is because they are worried about their own elections back then in home if they keep this guy in the White House. But the problem with the also people who support Trump, people who support MAGA, is they don't expect good things to happen. They don't expect from their politicians, from their congressmen or senators, they don't expect them to sort of have some principles or have some vision for the future. They expect them to keep line with Trump and just support anything he says. And that's what's that's what's like scary. It's just a bunch of psychopaths,
Yeah.
psychophans.
Yeah, Davy Boy mentioned in the chat that there was a terrorist attack in Tel Aviv today. Two people were stabbed, and yeah, the ceasefire hasn't started yet. It's starting for tomorrow, from tomorrow, so Israel is still operating, and of course, the terrorists are still active terrorists rather than sleeper cells in effect until the time comes. Yeah, in terms of pushback against Trump from within his party, first of all, I've said this a lot on the channel. In as a political machine, the Democratic Party is much more a well-oiled machine. It operates in such a way that it doesn't let a Bernie Sanders win the primaries, even if he's in with a good chance, because he's not in with a good chance of winning the election. He's kind of a harder sell to people in the middle. And yeah, with Biden, they tried to tell us a certain story, and then Biden was live on television, and it was difficult to keep telling that story, so they got rid of him. With Trump, the Republican Party still had enough elements of um, I don't even want to say semi-reason, but not as bad as Trump in 2016. And they did try to get rid of him a couple times, even after he was confirmed when the whole grabbed him by the pussy video recording, not video, the audio recording came out. And they tried to get rid of him. They couldn't. They were stuck with him. And yeah, at this point, Trump, I think, controls the every part of that party, and there's no. It'll take a long time after Trump to get rid of Trumpism and the MAGA movement from within that party, if ever. I mean, it could be that there's no hope for that party ever. Um, yeah, and you mentioned that there are some good people in the administration, there are some bad people, and we've talked a lot about how this is true in the conservative movement. I mean, it's true. We're going to talk, I believe, depending on news, breaking news this week, but we might talk about the Daily Wire and some of the stuff that's been going on there. But even a year ago or so, when the Daily Wire had their inner conflict between Ben Shapiro and Candace Owens. It's amazing that you even get to that stage where you have somebody who's, this is a channel that is uh, coming at things from a supposedly a certain perspective. This is a conservative news organization, and within that big tent of conservatism, you have, strongly pro-Israel and strongly anti-Semitic, conspiratorial, and it somehow, it fits in a sense. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know who's going to win those inner battles. But remember, in terms of the people we were talking when Trump was nominating these people, we were talking about um, the kind of how better people seem to be in positions that are going to affect foreign policy, for example, Secretary of State. And yet, yeah, the first act is one within foreign policy, and it is very much something that I think the Candace Owenses and the Tucker Carlsons and the Tulsi Gabbards of the world will applaud.
Uh, just quickly, someone in the chat says, "Stop blaming Donald Trump. Benjamin Netanyahu is the leader of Israel." Were you saying the same thing when Biden was president and he was pushing back against Netanyahu? And were you blaming Biden back then? Because again, it's important to have the same standard. Through since October 7th, we have blamed Biden for a lot of stuff every single time he basically stopped Israel from doing something. And again, sort of the moral blame, in a sense, is in a different way on both sides. Netanyahu is the leader of Israel and he should be able to assert itself. But also, America, if America stands for the West, if America stands for freedom and sort of values of liberty, it should support 100% Israel in what it's doing. It's fighting against terrorism. It's fighting against barbarism. And sort of the problem of America is the fact that they are supposedly, the most Western culture, the most free nation, and yet when it comes to these important things, it is not behind Israel. It is not behind the West, behind fighting against savagery. So yeah, the sort of the failures are on both sides, but it's important to remember in what way. It's when we blame Trump from this, we are not taking blame away from Biden, we are not taking away blame from Netanyahu, but there are things, you shouldn't expect the bare minimum from like politicians. These are people we elect to represent them, and they have a great amount of both sort of power and responsibility. So we should expect something better than it's someone else's fault. And this is going to be like this was Trump's last presidency. It was always the deep state. It was always the swamp. It was never his fault.
Yeah, and I agree. There is absolutely blame to go around. Netanyahu is, again, it's I understand it's super, super difficult to be prime minister of Israel and stand up to the president of the United States. I don't know if I could do it. I'm not running for prime minister. If you can't do the job, resign and let somebody else do it. That is your job at this point. If America is putting pressure on you to surrender to the people who did October 7th, to give them victory in the war that they started, when you can actually militarily are capable of winning it, then you say no. couple days ago, I was watching a video. Actually, it was yesterday, but it's a video from a couple days ago on Israel's channel 14, which is kind of religious right wing, and they have this panel show, and Itamar Ben Gvir was on there, and I made this point. People who watch my Hebrew podcast have already heard me make this point, but now you get to hear it made in English. He was everything Ben Gvir said, almost everything he said was absolutely right. I mean, he was saying, I was against the first deal. It was a bad deal. I'm against this deal. And look, what we should say is President Trump, we love you. Maybe I don't agree with that part, but we love you. But on this occasion, we have to do what we have to do. And I'm sitting there watching this, thinking, wow, Ben-Gvir is a great a commentator, but he's doing commentary on his own work, which is the opposite of what he's recommending in his commentary. Because he's sitting in this government, and yeah, he's I guess scheduled to resign today or somehow explain why he's not resigning, even though he said he'd resign. But even that, in this panel that he was on, he was saying that even if he resigns, he's not gonna topple the government, which of course he can do, being in the Knesset, the Israeli parliament. He's not. So what is the point? All you're doing is handing Netanyahu to the Israeli left, and if there's not enough pressure from Trump, the additional pressure will come from the left, and Netanyahu succumbs to pressure. We know that. That's who he is. So yeah, I don't know. I would love to see the so-called right in Israel leave the government. And I'm not just talking about Ben Gvir and Smotrich. Again, I don't disagree. I don't agree with these people on anything except some of what they say about how to fight a war, which is the opposite of how they actually fight it. But if they actually believe that, leave the government. Some people in the Likud can also leave the government and force Netanyahu to either call an election where I do think more right-wing elements will win, or change your mind and succumb to the pressure from the Israeli right rather than the Israeli left and Donald Trump.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest problem is that sort of, we talked about the Israelis for Hamas, or sort of Israelis who are pushing against this. And the fact is that, at the end of the day, you go back towards the people, and the fact that there is so little support for the war in Israel itself sort of feels you like, yeah, you can sort of blame it on Ben Gvir and Smotrich for not pushing hard enough. But there is a bunch of other, right-wing parties in Netanyahu's coalition that are not pushing against this, that have fully pretty much signed on it. And if there is an election, we might see, let's say this government like breaks up, and there is a new election. Usually, the parties in government are the ones that lose in the election. So we would have to see if it happened that the election was called, and let's say we got or Ben Gvir and Smotrich or people pushing against this deal. Let's say that there is maybe even new party. I'm sure Israel makes like 10 new parties every election. I'm sure if there is real pushback against this, we would see more votes coming in that direction. But my sort of worry is that we won't see much more. There is simply not enough support for the war in Israel itself. I mean, I try to check the opinion polls every now and then, and while Likud in some cases have been rising, I think the Smotrich and Ben Gvir have pretty much stayed at around the same percentages throughout the war, maybe getting slight bumps around, let's say, the ceasefire deals. But yeah, not enough to sort of
Yeah,
carry through.
although we'll see. Feiglin announced a few days ago that he is going to be running. I'm interested in seeing what's going to happen with that. He's at least rhetorically, I think, better than Ben Gvir. Not that that's a high bar, but anyway, I'll get back to that in a second. Thank you, Mumujo, for the super chat. Mumujo says Trump called out the pro-Hamas protests and now invited one of their pro-Hamas leaders to the inauguration. Voted for him, but I do not trust him. Yeah, he invited an imam that is was it pro-Hamas or pro-Hezbollah statements that he's made. But anyway, yeah, to say some words at the inauguration. And We talked about this, when Trump, when he was running, we said he's very pro-Israel when he's talking to AIPAC, and he wants to end the suffering of the Palestinians when he's talking in Dearborn. So, which Trump are you voting for? You don't know because you're voting for whatever decisions he's going to make in the future, which I don't think he knew at that time. And although it could be that, yeah, could be that he's still holding that grudge for Netanyahu and. Anyway, the person who was upset with us for blaming only Trump, which of course we're not doing, is also saying the only leader that ever warned you about what was going to happen is Rabbi Meir Kahane. Yeah, great, thanks. Rabbi Meir Kahane wanted in Israel that was basically a Jewish Iran. No thanks. Yeah, again, this is why when you hear Ben Gvir talk about war, it sounds great, but listen to the rest of what he's talking about before you vote for him. And of course, remember that when it comes to war, he is a part of everything that Israel has done from humanitarian aid, which he opposed, great, but it still happened, to hostage deals, which he opposed, but it still happened, to sending soldiers to ground operations where the goal of the operation could have been achieved much more efficiently from the air, sending them to their death. So I don't know if he opposes that, but in any case, he's a part of it. So no, and yeah, I don't want a Ben Gvir on steroids when it comes to internal policies.
Uh, so someone says Trump sent an envoy who is in bed with the Qataris. I rather expected this betrayal, and I've heard this a couple of times. I haven't looked into what's his name, Witkoff, enough to like say either way. But again, it's already like putting blame away from Trump. Like he's not even in office, and he already did something that is not actually his fault because it's someone who he hired for the job that actually does it. No, it's his cabinet. Everything Trump administration does is behind him. It's his responsibility. He cannot run away from responsibility every time something like this happens. And also, he was the first to announce this deal, so he is fully behind it. This is fully with him. There is no way to sort of run away. He likes this deal. He said he wants to deal. Even before the election, he wasn't saying he wants to deal with Hamas, I think specifically, but he was calling for a deal with Hezbollah. That's just one step away from calling for a deal with Hamas. So he was fully behind this. And I think someone also said Trump will definitely be holding a grudge towards Iranian regime. Well, the thing with Trump is I think every single world leader, whenever they do Zoom call meetings with Trump, they just have like a sticker. They just don't insult him, and they know that they'll get away with anything they want. Because as long as they don't do that, as long as they call him the great leader, he will be fully behind him. Because he has no like he has no standards. He is like Peter Keating, pretty much from The Fountainhead. As long as you say nice things about him, then it must be well. If people say nice things about it, then I must be nice. I must be great if people say that.
Um, I think we promised to read through that Wall Street Journal article. We
I
didn't
have
get
time.
to it. uh, Actually, you know what? Since we promised, let's read a little bit, and then I want to respond to this person who advocates for Kahana. But let me quickly read. It was Saturday, the Jewish Sabbath, when Steve Witkoff, President-elect Donald Trump's Middle East envoy, sat down with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to deliver a stark message from his boss. It was time for a ceasefire deal in Gaza. Witkoff, a real estate developer from New York, told the prime minister choices had to be made and Israel's negotiators needed the authority to make decisions, a person familiar with his conversations said. If Netanyahu didn't want to work that way, Witkoff said, everyone should just pack their bags and go home, the person said. Witkoff delivered the same imperative to Arab mediators. A day earlier in Doha, Qatar, armed with a thick file containing the details of previous rounds of talks, he told them it was time for an agreement, not endless diplomatic back and forth, the mediators and the person familiar with the conversation said. Um, okay, I think that tells the story in essence, although there's more, and there's stuff that came out earlier about him, wanting to meet Netanyahu like in lunchtime or afternoon or something like that on Saturday, and Netanyahu said, "Well, it's the Sabbath, so let's wait until the end of the day." And Witkoff was very upset, so Netanyahu showed up in for the meeting, which of course is so stupid on so many levels that we could do an episode about how stupid that is for from both sides. But yeah, it's I think for Witkoff it was probably symbolic to say, look, this is a new there's a new sheriff in town, and this is how things work now. And again, we see that that works with Netanyahu. Um, okay, just this thing that the Kahana person in the chat is saying. Why do you never talk about expelling Yusuf Haddad from Israel? Don't you understand he wants to kill all the Jews? That's not the exact wording of the comment. The exact wording is, why do you never talk about expelling Arabs from Israel? Don't you understand they want to kill all Jews? Yeah, because we're not racist. Unlike you, we don't think that, if somebody is born, in an Arab family, in an Arab village, they are therefore predetermined to want to kill all the Jews. That is not the case. And in Israel, of all places, you see that to be the case. There are definitely Arab Israelis who are anti-Israel, and that should be dealt with, but not in the sense of every Arab any more than, why don't you expel all the Jews? You know how many left-wing anti-Israel Jews there are in Israel? That makes no sense. It's a different story at a time of war. When you're dealing with Gaza, for example, I'm all for expelling people from Gaza you know if if that's if that's how you win the war. But no. Uh, yeah, you don't expel races unless you are a racist. We're not, so we're not in agreement here.
Yeah, and it's important to remember those are Israeli citizens. They have full rights of in the case of Israel as any other person. There are few exceptions when it comes to the army, but again, it's not that you cannot participate or join the army as an Arab Israeli. It's that you don't have conscription. So in some ways, you're better. I don't necessarily like the exception. Well, I don't like the military draft itself or the conscription itself. So that's already what's problematic. But yeah, calling for any, I think there was some expulsion when, during the Independence War, after, those people, they actively like were fighting against Israel, were trying to destroy Israel, and some of them were expelled, some of them stayed and later got citizenship. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and the situation was the country had just been founded, and Israel said, you're welcome to stick around and be citizens, and they're like, no, we'd rather kill you. So yeah, that was the situation back then. Um, this is not the situation right now, and this person also said with Kahana, you would never have October 7th. Well, you could have October 7th going in either direction. Remember, we had Kahana supporters who are actual terrorists going around killing random Arabs. It's not as nowhere near as common a thing as the other way around. You have to go back sometimes decades to find where that happens. But no, look, the Israel that you want is not an Israel that we would support. This channel would not be covering this as the most important political issue of our time if it was, Iran versus Saudi Arabia, basically, and that's what it would be if Israel was the kind of Israel that the Kahana people want. We've spoken about Kahana in the past. Maybe we'll do kind of an episode at some point about it, because I think that's interesting. Okay, there we go. Now this person is going in the only direction he can go. All right, and we are also going in the only direction we can go, which is to end this show because it is time. Parting thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to Kahanism, which is sort of my understanding, it's like a pretty sort of like Orthodox Judaism, but like taking to almost like in some cases terrorist level, or like full on basically calling for a Jewish state, not meaning, Jews can live there peacefully, but only Jews can live there, and sort of the Judaic law or whatever is sort of or sort of orthodox practices are sort of enforced. And it's like if that were the case, that October 7, if Israel was dead, October 7 wouldn't have happened. Maybe, but also it wouldn't matter. We would not care about it. If it's just another, we support Israel because it's a relatively free country in the region. And the hatred towards Israel is coming from anti-civilization, anti-Western perspective. It's not that Israel is not free enough. It's not that Israel is not good enough when it comes to sort of putting before Western values. That's not who the major opposition to Israel is. Um, it's all about basically them being Western, being civilized. Uh, so yeah, if it was Kahanis in any way, then there is no way to support it.
Yeah, Deborah says in the chat, Razi, chill. This troll has been trying to wind everybody up. But the thing is, we're a pro-Israel channel that wants to differentiate itself from other pro-Israel people because we think they're wrong in why they support Israel, in the kind of Israel they want, and it's important. So I like that we have such people and we can respond to them. We had. I'm still not sure this was the right decision, but in on the Hebrew podcast that I have, we talked about we interviewed somebody who was from the Kahana movement in New York, and he was talking about the kind of country that he would like to see Israel be, and I of course expressed my disagreement, and one of the things I asked him about was what happens if a Jew marries a non-Jew, and he says that's treason. Now, treason I believe is something that should be on the books. It's good to have a law against treason. In Israel, there is one, and the maximum penalty for that is death, which I also have no objection to. But yeah, this person, I kind of asked him, okay, well, am I gonna be charged with treason if I set foot in Israel because I'm married to a non-Jew? And of course he kind of walked it back, but yeah, his country is not one that I want to live in. It's not one that I would support any more than I would support Saudi Arabia. I don't support Israel because it's the Jewish state. I support Israel because it's a beacon of civilization in a sea of savagery that is the Middle East, and it's surrounded by such savages that want to exterminate the people living there because they are good, and they will not be good if they follow this advice.
Yeah,
Anyway, yeah.
just to add, that's why I also dislike any sort of points how the Jews were the first here, or sort of this land actually belongs to the Jews, or anything like that. Because again, if Israel wasn't the country it is, then those same arguments would still technically stand because they come from history, not from what Israel is right now. And th that argument would no longer make sense, or in a sense, the argument itself would still make sense, but I wouldn't support it anymore. So does this land belong to the collective of Jews or not? Either way, it doesn't change my mind about whether the Israel in the way it is right now, and the Israelis, both Jews and Arabs, and all the other ethnic groups that make up Israel, if they have a right to be there, wouldn't affect it anyway. They have it because they observe rights, because they protect rights relatively when it comes to the region. It's not because, some people from 2000 years were here while the other people weren't.
Well, uh, there's more to say, and it will be said. We're back tomorrow with the Daily Objective. Also, some of the upcoming shows on the channel that are planned, that they're scheduled with a certain time and day. We can't guarantee that that's when they'll actually air because there could be other topics. But go ahead and look at the channel, see what's coming up, give it a preemptive like. That will help with the algorithm, and of course, give this a like if you haven't. Uh, Comment, share, and yeah, this is still not the end. So we will keep fighting as long as there is a chance to win. Thanks, Daniel. Thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.